The morning fog hung low over the Ashwood, that ancient stretch of twisted trees and amber dust that separated the farming villages from the wild edge of the world. Kael had lived on that edge his whole life. Not by choice, but because the world had never quite made room for him anywhere else. He was not a knight, not a healer, not even a merchant with a cart and a coin purse. He was a wanderer with calloused hands, a worn leather satchel, and a small hut built from whatever the forest offered. He ate what he grew, spoke to no one for weeks at a time, and liked it that way, or so he told himself each morning when the silence felt heavier than stone. It was on a cold Thursday, when the wind came from the north and carried the smell of rain, that everything changed. He heard her before he saw her. A small sound, half sob, half cough, coming from behind the dead thorn bush near the eastern path. Kael stopped walking. He listened again. There it was. Weak, frightened, real. He pushed aside the dry branches, and there she was. A little girl, no older than 6 or 7, crouched in the dirt with her knees pulled to her chest. She had pale silver hair matted with mud, pointed ears peeking through tangled strands, and dark tribal markings running up both arms, the kind that elven forest children were born with. Her eyes, when they opened and looked up at him, were the color of cracked amber, golden and glassy with fever. She didn't speak. She just stared. Kael crouched down slowly, the way you do when you don't want to frighten a wounded animal. "Hey," he said quietly. "I'm not going to hurt you." She blinked. A single tear ran through the dirt on her cheek. He took off his outer coat and wrapped it around her without another word. She was burning with heat, her skin like an ember through the fabric. He picked her up carefully, and she didn't resist. She pressed her face into his shoulder and went still. He carried her back to his hut. For 3 days, Kael nursed the child back to health. He boiled water with dried herbs he kept in clay jars along his windowsill. He fed her broth made from forest roots. He told her the names of things, the birds outside, the cracks in the ceiling, the patterns the firelight made on the wooden wall, because she would lie awake in silence and he didn't know what else to offer. On the second night she finally spoke. "Elara," she said, touching her own chest. "Kael," he replied, touching his. She nodded solemnly, as if they had made a very serious agreement. By the third morning, Elara was sitting up, eating properly, and pointing at everything in the hut with curious fingers. She had found his old carved wooden fox on the shelf and decided it was hers now. He let her have it. He asked her gently if she knew where her mother was. Elara's expression shifted, not to sadness exactly, but to something older, a child's version of grief. She pointed east toward the deep part of the Ashwood and said only one word: "Searching." Kael didn't press further. He let her rest. He kept watch. On the 5th day after he'd found her, they came. He was splitting firewood behind the hut when he heard footsteps, fast and desperate, coming through the tree line. He turned, axe still in hand, and saw her. She burst through the tree line like something the forest had finally released after holding too long. Tall, pale, with the same silver hair as the child. Longer, wild, streaming behind her. The same dark markings covered her arms, her collarbone, her legs. She wore rough woven fabric wrapped around her like armor made of survival itself. Her green eyes were wide and rimmed red from days of crying. She saw Elara standing in the doorway of the hut. The sound she made was not a word. It was something beyond language. Ran. She fell to her knees in the dust and caught her daughter in both arms, pulling her so close that Elara laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time since Kael had found her. The mother pressed her face into her daughter's silver hair and shook silently. her whole body letting go of something enormous. Kael stood back. He set down the axe. He looked at the sky so he wouldn't stare. When she finally looked up at him, her green eyes were wet and searching. "You kept her safe," she said. Her voice was low, rough from days of calling out through the forest. "You fed her. You healed her." "She healed herself," Kael said quietly. "I just gave her a warm place to do it." The woman stood slowly, keeping one hand on Elara's shoulder as if she couldn't bear to lose contact. She studied his face the way people study something they're trying to understand completely. Then she said, "I am Elara, and I owe you more than I can name." "You owe me nothing," he said. "Take your daughter home." They left before sundown. Kael watched them disappear into the tree line and told himself he felt fine. He didn't expect them to come back. But 3 days later, as the amber light of late afternoon stretched across his dusty yard, he heard footsteps again. Slower this time. Deliberate. Elara walked out of the Ashwood alone. No, not alone. Elara was beside her, holding the carved wooden fox in both hands, returning it with great ceremony and an expression of someone making a very important decision. Kael accepted the fox. He looked at Elara. She didn't look away. She stood in the dust in front of his hut with her hands at her sides and her chin lifted, and she said the thing he had absolutely not prepared for. "I have lived in that forest for 4 years. Alone. Since Elara's father left us before she could walk. I had nothing. No village, no walls, no one. Then my daughter nearly died, and a stranger in the edge of the world kept her alive with broth and kindness." He paused. Kael said nothing. "I am not a woman who begs," she continued. "But I am standing here asking. Stay near us. Let us stay near you. Not for debt, I swear to you it is not that. It is because my daughter already calls this place safe. And when I think of you, I feel the same." The silence between them was the kind that only comes after something true has been said. Kael looked at Elara. She was watching him with her amber eyes, holding the wooden fox, waiting. He looked at Elara. She hadn't blinked. She hadn't flinched. He exhaled slowly. Then, for the first time in longer than he could remember, Kael smiled. A real one, the kind that cost something. "I have room," he said simply. "And the hut could use more noise." Elara immediately cheered and ran past him through the door.